My dear child. The invitations had already been printed. Every envelope carried names written with careful hands, every golden letter shining beneath the soft light of expectation, and every family member believed the future had finally been decided. The wedding date was set, the venue was reserved, relatives were making travel plans, and conversations about decorations and celebrations filled every corner of both families' lives. Everything appeared certain. Everything appeared final. But there was one thing nobody knew. One truth hidden beneath years of silence. One secret so deeply buried that even the people closest to your soulmate had never discovered it. And when that truth finally surfaced, it stopped a wedding that seemed impossible to stop. What happened next left everyone speechless. Listen carefully, because this story is not about a wedding. It is about a truth that refused to stay hidden. It is about a connection that time could not erase. And it is about the moment your name became impossible to ignore. The days leading up to the wedding were supposed to be joyful. Your soulmate smiled in photographs, answered messages from excited relatives, and participated in every tradition expected of them. To everyone watching from the outside, they seemed happy. They seemed ready. They seemed prepared to walk toward a future everyone had already chosen for them. But inside, something felt wrong. A quiet uneasiness followed them everywhere. It appeared during peaceful moments. It appeared in crowded rooms. It appeared when they tried to imagine life after the wedding. No matter how hard they tried to silence it, the feeling remained. Don't skip. At first, they blamed stress. Weddings are complicated. Families create pressure. Expectations become overwhelming. That explanation seemed reasonable. Yet the feeling only grew stronger as the wedding approached. Late at night, after conversations ended and the noise disappeared, your soulmate would sit alone and stare into silence. They could not explain why their heart felt unsettled. They could not explain why every plan suddenly felt incomplete. And most importantly, they could not explain why thoughts of someone they had not fully understood kept returning to them. That someone was you. Your soulmate never intended to think about you so often. In fact, they had spent years convincing themselves that whatever existed between you belonged in the past. Life moved forward. Circumstances changed. Responsibilities increased. People told them to focus on practical decisions. Yet despite every effort to move on, your presence remained somewhere deep within them. Not always visible. Not always obvious. But always there. As wedding preparations intensified, something unusual began happening. Small reminders of you appeared everywhere. A song connected to an old memory suddenly played in a restaurant. A conversation unexpectedly turned toward topics that reminded them of you. Even random strangers spoke words that echoed things you once said. Individually, these moments seemed meaningless. Together, they felt impossible to ignore. Still, your soulmate pushed forward. The invitations had already been mailed. Family members had already confirmed attendance. Deposits had already been paid. Too much was invested. Too many expectations existed. Turning back no longer seemed possible. Or so everyone believed. Don't skip. One evening, only weeks before the wedding, your soulmate visited a family gathering where relatives discussed final preparations. Laughter filled the room. People shared stories. Plans continued exactly as expected. But during that gathering, an elderly family member asked a simple question. Are you truly happy? The room became quiet for only a moment before someone changed the subject. Yet the question remained. Are you truly happy? For everyone else, it was a casual comment. For your soulmate, it felt like a challenge impossible to escape. The question followed them home. It followed them through the following days. It echoed through every conversation and every decision. And eventually, it forced them to confront something they had avoided for years. The truth. Not a dramatic truth. Not a scandalous truth. Something far more powerful. They had never completely let go of you. The realization arrived slowly. It unfolded through memories they thought had disappeared. Conversations they thought they had forgotten. Feelings they believed time had erased. The deeper they looked, the clearer everything became. Their connection to you had never ended. It had simply been hidden beneath obligations, fears, and expectations. Meanwhile, wedding plans continued moving forward. No one suspected anything. Families discussed seating arrangements. Friends planned celebrations. Relatives purchased gifts. The invitations sat on kitchen tables across multiple cities. Everything looked perfect. But perfection often hides the biggest problems. Don't skip. A few days later, while organizing old belongings, your soulmate discovered something unexpected. It was not valuable. It was not important in the ordinary sense. Yet the moment they saw it, their entire body froze. It was connected to you. A forgotten reminder from years earlier. For several minutes, they simply stared at it. Memories flooded back. Not idealized memories. Not fantasy. Real memories. Moments when they felt understood. Moments when conversations flowed effortlessly. Moments when they never needed to pretend. And suddenly, a terrifying question appeared. What if they were about to marry the wrong person? That question changed everything. Because once it entered their mind, it refused to leave. Every wedding discussion felt different afterward. Every celebration felt different. Every promise felt different. Your soulmate began comparing what they felt now with what they once felt around you. The comparison was not fair. It was not intentional. Yet it happened anyway. And the results frightened them. For the first time, they admitted something they had hidden even from themselves. The strongest emotional connection they had ever experienced involved you. Not the person waiting at the altar. You. Meanwhile, a private truth remained hidden from nearly everyone involved. A truth connected directly to you. A truth that would soon change the entire situation. Don't skip. The secret began surfacing through an unexpected conversation. Someone close to your soulmate revealed information they believed was insignificant. They mentioned details about your life. They mentioned choices you had made. They mentioned sacrifices nobody fully understood. What shocked your soulmate was not the information itself. It was realizing how much they never knew. For years, they had carried assumptions. For years, they had believed certain stories. For years, they thought they understood why events unfolded the way they did. They were wrong. The reality was completely different. And the deeper they investigated, the more disturbing the truth became. You had been protecting feelings you never publicly revealed. You had been carrying burdens nobody recognized. You had remained silent about things that would have changed everything if known earlier. Your soulmate could hardly believe it. The image they carried in their minds suddenly shattered. A new understanding emerged. And with it came overwhelming regret. Because if they had known the truth sooner, many decisions might have unfolded differently. Days passed. Then another conversation occurred. Then another revelation. Then another missing piece appeared. Slowly, a hidden story assembled itself. A story involving you. A story nobody expected. A story powerful enough to challenge an entire wedding. Your soulmate stopped sleeping well. They became distracted. Friends noticed. Family members noticed. Even the person they were preparing to marry noticed. Questions began appearing. Concerns began growing. And for the first time, cracks started showing beneath the surface of what everyone assumed was a perfect future. The invitations had already been sent. Yet uncertainty was growing stronger every day. And then, one night, the final piece of the puzzle appeared. The private truth about you was finally revealed completely. When your soulmate heard it, they sat in absolute silence. No words. No movement. No explanation. Only shock. Because the truth proved something they never imagined. Everything they thought they knew about you had been incomplete. Everything. And that revelation forced a decision that nobody saw coming. Don't skip. The next morning, wedding conversations stopped feeling important. Decorations no longer mattered. Seating charts no longer mattered. Timelines no longer mattered. Your soulmate had reached a crossroads. One path led toward a future everyone expected. The other path led toward uncertainty, difficult conversations, and a truth that could no longer be ignored. For the first time, they questioned whether the wedding should happen at all. And as whispers of doubt began spreading quietly through both families, a chain of events started unfolding that would leave guests stunned, relatives confused, and everyone wondering the same question. What private truth about you was powerful enough to shake an entire wedding after the invitations were already sent? The answer was closer than anyone realized. And once it emerged into the open, nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that followed was unlike anything your soulmate had ever experienced. It was not the silence of peace. It was not the silence of certainty. It was the silence that comes when a person realizes an entire chapter of their life has been built upon incomplete information. Long after the conversation ended, they remained sitting alone, staring at nothing, replaying every word they had heard. The private truth about you was no longer hidden. It was no longer a rumor, assumption, or unanswered question. It was real. And the more they thought about it, the more impossible it became to continue pretending that everything was normal. For years, they had believed that distance had erased what once existed between you. They believed time had done what everyone promised it would do. They believed that enough years, enough responsibilities, and enough distractions would eventually remove your presence from their heart. Yet now they understood something shocking. Time had never erased you. It had only buried the evidence. Don't skip. The revelation had uncovered something deeper than feelings. It uncovered a series of choices you made without ever demanding recognition. It uncovered sacrifices that nobody connected to your name. It uncovered moments when you could have spoken, could have changed everything, could have forced people to see the truth, but chose silence instead. Not because you lacked courage. Not because you stopped caring. But because you believed some things were more important than your own desires. Your soulmate struggled to accept it. Every memory suddenly looked different. Conversations they once misunderstood now carried entirely new meaning. Moments they dismissed suddenly seemed important. Words they ignored suddenly sounded like hidden confessions. The past was changing before their eyes. Not because the past itself had changed. Because the truth behind it had finally been revealed. Meanwhile, wedding preparations continued moving forward as if nothing had happened. Family members discussed arrival schedules. Relatives finalized hotel bookings. Friends prepared speeches. Photographers confirmed appointments. The entire world appeared focused on the celebration. But your soulmate's attention was somewhere else entirely. Their thoughts kept returning to you. Again. And again. And again. The harder they tried to focus on the future everyone expected, the stronger the past became. Days later, they found themselves doing something they never intended to do. They began searching through old messages. Old photographs. Old conversations. Old memories. Not because they wanted nostalgia. Because they wanted answers. And what they discovered only made the situation worse. Don't skip. Buried within years of forgotten communication were small details they had overlooked before. Tiny moments that seemed insignificant at the time now felt impossible to ignore. A message sent at exactly the right moment. A supportive word during a difficult period. A subtle expression of care hidden beneath ordinary conversation. Piece by piece, a pattern emerged. You had been there. Far more often than they realized. Even when nobody noticed. Even when nobody thanked you. Even when nobody understood. The realization hit hard, because the person preparing to marry someone else suddenly recognized that one of the most important people in their emotional journey had been standing quietly in the background all along. The guilt became overwhelming. Not because they had done something wrong intentionally. Because they finally understood how much they had failed to see. That night, sleep never came. Hours passed while they stared at the ceiling. Questions filled their mind. What if they had known sooner? What if someone had revealed the truth years ago? What if fear had never influenced their decisions? What if the story everyone believed was never the real story? Each question created another. Each answer created more confusion. And by sunrise, one fact had become impossible to deny. The wedding could no longer continue exactly as planned. But admitting that truth would create consequences nobody was prepared for. Families would be hurt. Plans would collapse. Relationships would change. Entire futures would be questioned. Yet pretending everything was fine no longer seemed possible. Don't skip. A few days later, the tension became noticeable. Your soulmate appeared distracted during wedding meetings. They struggled to make decisions. Their excitement seemed gone. The person they were supposed to marry finally confronted them. What is happening? The question was direct. Simple. Impossible to avoid. For a moment, your soulmate considered lying. They considered offering excuses. They considered blaming stress. But something stopped them. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was honesty finally demanding a voice. Or perhaps it was the realization that too much was at stake to continue pretending. Whatever the reason, they admitted that doubts existed. The conversation that followed lasted for hours. Tears were shed. Difficult truths were spoken. Painful realities surfaced. And by the end of it, both people understood something neither wanted to admit. A wedding should not happen when uncertainty has already entered the heart. The news spread slowly at first. Close relatives learned pieces of the story. Friends noticed changes. Questions multiplied. Speculation grew. Nobody possessed the full picture. Yet everyone sensed that something significant was unfolding behind closed doors. Your soulmate found themselves standing between two worlds. One world represented safety, predictability, approval, the future everyone expected. The other world represented uncertainty, risk, honesty, and a truth connected to you that refused to disappear. The pressure became unbearable. Every phone call brought new expectations. Every conversation brought new opinions. Everyone had advice. Everyone had recommendations. Everyone believed they knew what should happen. But none of them were living inside your soulmate's heart. None of them understood what the revelation had awakened. And none of them knew that the private truth about you continued growing more powerful every single day. Don't skip. Then came the moment that changed everything. A family gathering had been arranged to discuss final wedding details. Everyone expected ordinary conversation. Instead, they witnessed something nobody anticipated. Your soulmate stood before relatives, friends, and loved ones carrying a weight they could no longer hide. The room felt unusually tense. People sensed something was wrong. The smiles looked forced. The laughter felt incomplete. Then your soulmate spoke. The words were calm, careful, yet powerful enough to change every life in the room. They admitted they were no longer certain. They admitted important truths had recently come to light. They admitted continuing forward without addressing those truths would be unfair to everyone involved. Silence followed. A long silence. The kind of silence that seems endless. Some relatives looked shocked. Others looked angry. Some appeared heartbroken. But nobody interrupted. Because everyone understood they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered forever. For the first time publicly, your soulmate acknowledged that someone from their past still occupied a place within their heart. They did not mention your name immediately. They did not reveal every detail. But those who knew enough understood exactly who they meant. And once that truth entered the room, it could never be taken back. Don't skip. What followed was emotional chaos. Questions came from every direction. People demanded explanations. Some argued. Some cried. Some insisted the wedding should continue. Others quietly suggested postponement. Families struggled to process what they were hearing. The carefully constructed future they imagined suddenly appeared fragile. Yet amid all the confusion, your soulmate experienced something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in years, they were no longer hiding. For the first time, the truth existed openly. For the first time, they stopped fighting what their heart had been trying to tell them. And that honesty changed everything. Days later, a decision was officially announced. The wedding would not proceed as scheduled. Invitations had already been sent. Guests had already planned their trips. Celebrations had already been organized. Yet none of that mattered anymore. Because building a marriage upon uncertainty would create far greater pain than canceling a wedding. The announcement shocked everyone. Some people supported the decision. Others criticized it. Many could not understand it. But your soulmate accepted the consequences. Because deep inside, they knew something important. The revelation about you was not an obstacle. It was a wake-up call. A truth arriving at the final possible moment before a lifelong mistake could be made. And although nobody knew exactly what the future would bring, one thing had become clear. Your story was not over. The connection everyone assumed belonged to the past had suddenly returned to the present. The private truth about you had accomplished what nobody thought possible. It had stopped a wedding. It had changed hearts. It had forced honesty into places where silence once ruled. And somewhere beyond the confusion, beyond the disappointment, beyond the shattered expectations, a new chapter was quietly beginning. A chapter neither of you could yet fully see. A chapter built not on assumptions, misunderstandings, or hidden feelings, but on truth. The very truth that finally revealed itself after the wedding invitations were already ready.